with the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Sodha, and the political journalist, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome to both of you. So, to the front pages then, and today's news of Prince Philip's decision to step down from royal duties dominates the headlines, as you might expect. The Telegraph features a large picture of the Duke of Edinburgh with a beaming smile during his royal duties earlier today. Service with a smile, their headline. The Metro leading with the same story, this time with a more colourful take on Prince Philip's imminent resignation. They call him the ultimate royal role model. The Sun's front page is similar, saying he's had his fill. The Eye reflecting on the Prince's duties over the years, 22,000 solo engagements and more than 5,000 speeches. The Daily Express thanks him for his service. They also say the next generation of royals will step up to fill the gap. The Times pictures the Duke of Edinburgh, but its lead story is that a criminal investigation has been opened against Marine Le Pen over claims that she smeared her rival in the French presidential election. The Guardian reporting on European Council President Donald Tusk's appeal for calm over the Brexit negotiations. The Financial Times reports on the drop in oil prices, raising concerns about the recovery of the oil market. The Daily Mirror says BBC lawyers are furious that Sir Cliff Richard has legal bills of £1 million, costs they could be liable for if he wins his case against them. And the Daily Star says a number of Premier League footballers have sought help for mental health issues. So, to those stories then, and starting with the Times, Duke retires rather than grow frail in public. I love the fact that you're not frail at 95. It's amazing, isn't it?
There's really only one story in town tonight, and that is Prince Philip all over the papers. I was quite excited to see what this announcement today was going to be, because a number of the papers this morning trailed it, saying, you know, that staff from all over the country, from the royal household, had been gathered, and, you know, this was a pretty unusual.
It was a bit like the day when Theresa May called the election, wasn't it? And all those political reporters were sort
wondering
of
speculation.
Yeah.
But I think on this occasion there was probably quite a lot of informed, intelligence that it was likely to be something about Prince Philip, and he seems to have gone out with a bit of a bit of panache, as always, making a joke at his own expense.
Exactly. When asked why, I'm sad to see you're standing down. Well, I can't stand up for much longer. I mean, it's just it's brilliant, isn't it? Service with a smile there. At 95, Duke of Edinburgh steps down from public life with one final quip, as we said. But humble as always, the man who became the grandfather of the nation, because he has had a difficult role, hasn't he? You know, a naval officer in his own right, having to stand a few steps behind the Queen at all times and support her for decades now.
Yes, that's right. And of course, anyone who's watched The Crown on Netflix, which is a brilliant kind of dramatisation of the early years of the Queen's monarchy, will know, actually, I thought it gave a really good portrayal of Prince Philip and the sort of difficult decisions that he had to make, and the tensions that there must have been in that relationship, actually, when he sort of had to give up his career. It happens in a lot of modern relationships, whether it's a man or the woman. Someone has to make sacrifices, and I think that portrays it really well. But it is really quite incredible, I think, that he's kept going, and with all of his public duties till the age of 95, looks incredibly well for 95. Obviously, he would have had top-class healthcare, but yeah, it's really kind of rather astounding, I think. And as you said, as the papers are reporting, I think, this is sort of, the step away from, the front line of public life for him, but there are others in the royal family who will now step up and do even more. And I think this does pave the way for, Prince William and Harry and the Duchess of Cambridge. They've announced, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, they'll be moving from London to, moving
to London, yes.
To London in order to do more duties.
Yeah. What do you think about how the papers have handled this, the choice of their pictures, for example? There is, I've had my fill. He does look a little older in that one, doesn't he? The Eye, a slightly wider one, but with that quip, I can't stand up much longer. And The Guardian going for one inside. After 70 years of public duties, Philip is to retire. The least
flattering one. I mean, I like the one in the Times, being a bit of a traditionalist. I like the one on the front page of the Times.
The naval
makes
regalia.
him look sort of very upstanding and covered in all his medals and so on. It does feel like quite a watershed moment, I think. it's interesting to wonder about how long the Queen herself will go on doing quite as many duties. She's already scaling back certain commitments, and you know, she's obviously very used to having him at her side for a lot of this. And are the youngest generation of royals actually really going to step up now? Because I still get the feeling, I'm not really a great fan of some of the younger royals, that they're slightly reluctant to kind of get going. What do you think?
In the defence of Prince William, he has got young children. You know, he's allowed, and he was working as well, wasn't he? He's allowed to see his family grow up at this early stages, don't you think?
Well, I mean, no one's arguing that he's not allowed to see his family grow up, but I think he was doing something like 20 hours, wasn't he? I mean, I'm not totally sure if that's precisely the right figure for his job. And, you know, well, we've all got jobs and a lot of us have got jobs and young children, and it doesn't mean that we only do 20 hours and then a few extra on top of that.
I wonder if I think we will start to see that shift now, and I think in the last few weeks we saw both the princes talk about mental health in a very personal way to them and very publicly leading this campaign around mental health. And I think, I mean, apparently there have been a lot of messages sort of behind the scenes about the younger royals needing to step up and do more. And I think maybe that's the sort of start of a new phase, perhaps.
Well, the Express certainly see it as a watershed moment, promising a historic royals souvenir edition. Perhaps we'll see some more of those as well. But
you're going to be rushing out to get that, Sonia?
Oh yes, of course.
She'll want to return to politics, which is where we go next, of course, won't you? Let's go inside the papers then, shall we? To the story at the top there, and the warning this evening from Donald Tusk. Calm down, dears, it feels slightly light, doesn't it? But what's he said?
Yeah, I mean, I think he will get picked up on his choice of words, emotional, when you all need to calm down, particularly when they're addressed to a woman. But I'm sure they weren't intended in that way. And I have to say, I feel Donald Tusk is the only grown-up in this relationship, really. I think my heart really sank when I saw all of that briefing from the dinner that Juncker had with May earlier this week. There was that very sort of detailed leak about what happened at the dinner, lots of European officials saying Brexit isn't going to be a success. That wasn't a great way for them to handle it. You know, I voted Remain, but I don't think it was a great way for them to handle it. And I have to say, I think Theresa May has handled things really badly in the last 48 hours as well. So some of the attacks that she's made on Europe, the counter-attacks, have been incredibly strong, accusing European officials of meddling in British elections and issuing threats. And it's interesting because if you look back at when Gordon Brown and Tony Blair were prime ministers, you still saw some of this posturing against Europe. They still used Europe as an issue domestically to their advantage. But it wasn't done with this level of fraught tones and this hysterical kind of nature.
I mean, normally this is a point at which I would come in and defend Theresa May's handling of things, but actually on this occasion I agree with you, Sonia. I was really surprised at that statement that she made on Downing Street yesterday, mainly because I thought it was unnecessary. Clearly the strategy is, you know, create the enemy, try to bolster the vote by slightly spuriously, it seemed to me, suggesting that the EU and people within the EU are trying to interfere in our elections. I just don't buy into that, and I don't think it was necessary. She's in a real position of strength, and I think there are definite indications that Downing Street didn't really intend it to go off with quite such a bang as it did.
Well, everyone, the eyebrows, you know, rose instantly, didn't they? Everyone found it an extraordinary moment. She was hoping it would just be a bit of a knock towards the EU, and not these explosive crises that the...
And actually last night they were actively discouraging Tory MPs from going out and defending her. They were just like, let's just sort of hose this down a bit.
Well, it's a bit late now, isn't it? Cat is out the bag. But all those UKIP voters in the southwest might not move towards the Liberal Democrats because of it. So maybe the politicking it might work for her.
Perhaps. I think there will be people, particularly those who voted Leave, perhaps, who see what she says and think the comments are fair in light of what we had European officials saying earlier this week. But as Isabel said, I don't think it was necessary. These people have all got to sit down in a room with each other and try to hammer out a deal. And it's just not very becoming to see, you know, statesmen and women behave in this way. Yeah, exactly, sniping. That's a very good
Meanwhile,
word for
front
it.
page of The Times and Inside too is the increasingly acrimonious French presidential election. What is the latest that the Times is reporting on?
So the latest is a suggestion that the two final candidates for the presidential election are loggerheads over claims which appear to be very questionable. that the front runner Emmanuel Macron may have in some way secreted away money in a tax haven. This charge has been levelled at him by various sources, and there are just the fingerprints of the Kremlin potentially over it. It's all very kind of cloak and dagger, but he has taken none of this. He's absolutely come out fighting, saying it's all nonsense. You know, these various bits of evidence are forgeries, and you know what, I'm going to sue. And I think it looks, you know, it's really punchy, this. I'm getting quite excited by the French elections for the first time ever.
The debate was very punchy last night. And of course, this sort of critique plays right into, Le Pen is trying to portray Macron as this member of the cosmopolitan global elite. So by saying that he's got money squirreled away offshore somewhere, that really helps her to sort of make that case. But a lot of the websites where these documents have been popping up with supposed proof are Russian registered, apparently. And it does raise questions, I think. That we've seen allegations about the Russians interfering in the American election. There are a whole range of other very important European elections later this year.
Do you know what? If they're not interfering, they'll be very pleased at the amount of people that say they are and how good they are.
In the meantime, just a very, very tiny mention of our own UK elections, from where voting will be counting in some, but not that many this time, has to be said. The FT has got it on the front page. We'll have to wait to the online editions, presumably, in Saturday's newspapers for reflections on this.
Yes, it's a little amuse-bouche for the general election next month. So, yeah, I think we'll be expecting the first results through later tonight and tomorrow. Expectations are pretty high for the Conservatives, I think, because everyone seems to be assuming that the result of the election is a foregone conclusion, and they're pretty low for Labour, given how Labour are doing in the polls. And it will be interesting to see what happens, and there'll be lots of pundits making forecasts of the general election on the basis of what happens tomorrow. I think the thing to bear in mind is that normally oppositions do better in local elections and then they suffer in the general election when the two tend to be quite close together. So I suspect what will happen is that Labour might do slightly better in terms of vote share than the polls are saying and people are predicting. And I think Jeremy Corbyn, if that happens, will make great hay of that. But I wouldn't take that to... I would think it would be easy to overinterpret that for the general election.
Interesting. And one wonders what the turnout will be, given people have to G themselves up to get out to vote.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty low. I mean, I'm not excited by these elections. I don't imagine that the general population feel that they've got nothing better to do. I mean, I think that it will be pretty low.
There's election overload as well, isn't
there? Totally. Still, you know, whether it's a weather vane, a litmus test, as you say, for the general. Anyway, we will see. Still to come, can swearing make you stronger? We'll have the bleep button on standby, of course, after this.